In the 2000s and early 2010s, the internet was exploding as a place for online games. This was partially due to the fact that Flash as a platform allowed for complex, interactive environments to exist online. One type of online environment was the SVE, or Shared Virtual Environment. This is not to be confused with the other similar popular format of the MMORPG, or Massively Multiplayer Online Role-Playing Game. Due to the fact that SVEs, or Shared Virtual Environments, types of games did not include specific storylines for players to play through, but rather just set up a virtual environment for players to interact with. Some of the most popular SVEs were geared towards children, and for many kids growing up in the 2000s and early 2010s, SVEs were our first experience playing video games and interacting with others on the internet. Some examples of popular SVEs include, but are not limited to, Neopets, Club Penguin, and Webkinz, among other similar type of games. These games seemingly gave children a safe environment to interact with their friends and play games online. Many of these games limited the ways in which you could interact with other players to make them safe for kids, and as such, at least in my experience, they did not function as very effective chat rooms. I did not play these games to talk to my friends as much as I played them for the mini games and the character and house creators and decorator components. For me, they were a way to create a virtual version of myself and pretend that I inhabited a virtual world of the game and play the mini games to get virtual money, to buy things, to make my house and my pets happy, as well as a way to connect with my friends who were playing the same game, to have a common interest that we could talk about. According to the paper, The Language of Webkinz, Early Childhood Literacy in an Online Virtual World, when children are playing these kind of SVE games, it can be seen as a kind of mediated language play. This means that the games can help with learning literacy. Some examples of a way in which a game like Webkinz allows the players to interact with the game at different reading comprehension levels is the fact that a lot of the icons in the game combine pictures and text, where they show examples and of what is in the text. And some of the characters you interact with in the game both speak out loud and have speech bubbles with writing, as well as pointing or gesturing at what they're talking about. And different parts of the game utilize these different aspects in different ways, allowing even very young children to be able to play these games. This is not to say that the games were designed as a way to teach children how to read, more so that the games were developed with children as an audience in mind, and these kind of design elements needed to be implemented in order for the games to be accessible by said children, and the learning aspect was more of a byproduct, and as well as being a selling point for parents. There are even specific games that ask children specific questions based on their age, and being more on a type of academic level, such as you can see, Quizzy's Corner, this game, where you can put your age and it will tell you different kind of questions based on what it perceives that you may more likely know at that age level. This is interesting to think about because these games allow for very young children to be able to play them and interact effectively in the environments without much adult supervision. Webkinz was an interesting phenomenon of the SVE type of games in the way that it incorporated real-world toys, which is stuffed animals that you could go out and buy, and virtual toys, which is the virtual pets, together. In order to make a Webkinz account, at the time, you needed to go out and buy a Webkinz stuffed animal. Then you could log on to the website, enter your Webkinz code, and there you could virtually adopt your stuffed animal, play with it, feed it, even have it take classes and learn skills such as cooking in the online environment. In this way, you could compare collecting Webkinz in the late 2000s to how kids in the 90s collected Beanie Babies, although I don't think it ever got to that same level. You could have as many pets as you wanted, but if you did not purchase a new pet, after a while, your account would be deactivated. Nowadays, as you can see in the more modern version of the game, you don't need to have a physical Webkinz toy in order to play the games, as they've added a selection of free pets to choose from. This may have something to do with the fact that they may not manufacture as many stuffed animals, as I have not seen one in stores since probably around 10 or so years ago. I remember when I was playing the game, I had a friend whose account got deactivated, and so we decided to share my account after that. But then a while later, my account got deactivated as well. This was because if you did not buy a pet, was stuffed animal, after a certain amount of time, the account would be deactivated. After a while, I also remember that the game added another level of monetization, which was a membership that you had to pay in order to access certain parts of the game, including a chat room, among other things. As you can see, that is still a feature to this day, and there are many locations or items in the game that are behind this paywall. It is interesting to think about how Webkinz has changed over the years, focusing less on the physical aspect of a stuffed animal and more on the gameplay aspect. One thing I have noticed while playing is that in the years since I've played the game, there haven't been many changes in graphics mechanics. They haven't added many more minigames or other things along those lines. The biggest difference in gameplay now compared to when I played the game as a kid is that now, in order to play the game, I have to download the game onto my computer, versus before, I could play directly in my browser. This is mostly due to the fact that Flash Player, the browser extension that the game used to run on, is no longer supported by Adobe, or any browsers for that matter. I would have expected a game like Webkinz, that had lost a lot of its former popularity, wouldn't have made many efforts to survive the shift away from Flash, but they did update the game. Regardless, is an article that was released on the GAN's Webkinz website around the end of 2017, explaining to players the changes that would be going on as Flash Player was winding down its use, and they were working on switching their game to a mobile version and a downloadable computer version. What surprised me about this article wasn't anything about the body of the article. It's mostly just news-related things, but there were quite a few people in the comments excited about the update and who had been playing the game for a very long time. There's even one parent here who talks about playing the game herself, as well as her kids playing it. Going back and revisiting Webkinz as an old game I used to play when I was younger makes me think of the different types of gamers out there. Webkinz was a game that I grew out of as I got older, but it seems that for some people they continued to play it and even invested real money into things like the membership feature. It would be interesting to look at how a game like Webkinz has been able to survive the downfall of Flash and the introduction of mobile and downloadable versions of the game, while other SVEs that some might consider even more popular, such as Club Penguin, were not able to survive this shift. Personally, I think it may have something to do with the fact that Webkinz kept the game relatively the same as it used to be. Going back and playing it today, it brings me right back to how it was playing it when I was in elementary school. Switching gears slightly to talk about advertising, I don't consider Webkinz to have a lot of advertising compared to most of the rest of the internet. You'd think Webkinz would want to get in on the advertising money, as that is how a lot of internet-based websites make their money, especially since now they offer a free version of the site. But most of the ads I've seen on the site are for GANs-related products or other features of Webkinz itself. I think this is partially due to the fact that they have to comply with COPPA, the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, which, and I'm quoting from the FTC.gov, imposes certain requirements on operators of websites or online services directed to children under the age of 13, and on operators of other websites or online services that have actual knowledge that they are collecting personal information online from a child under 13 years of age. This limits the amount of information the Webkinz site can gather about their users and the types of targeted advertising campaigns they can run. Even though COPPA was in effect as of 1998, and so has been in effect throughout the whole run of the Webkinz site and game, there were still parents that were worried about their kids playing games like Webkinz. This article from ABC News in 2007 shows that some parents were concerned about the excessive screen time and privacy or socializing online concerns. There was a study done in 2008 that studied children's behaviors online by having their parents record videos of them spending time online. This study found that although young kids at the time were playing various games online, such as Webkinz or such similar games, this doesn't mean they understood what they were doing all of the time. Kids don't necessarily understand the concept of in-game currency. All they knew was they needed a lot of it in order to buy what they wanted in the virtual shop, but they didn't understand how much or how many games they would need to play in order to earn that said virtual money. They also didn't always understand the concept of certain parts of the game being behind a paywall. This means that while they may ask their parents to pay for a membership on a site like Webkinz, the children wouldn't necessarily know how to do so. One child even told her parents that they needed to put money in an envelope and send it to the company. The kids may need their parents' help for certain things online, such as navigating to the correct website. It was found that some kids don't understand the browser and certain functions other than playing their game, but that over time they realized clicking on certain areas such as ads or other buttons could direct them away from the game, and so know not to click on those. To me, this begs the question as to whether or not online banner advertising would work on children. I think it makes sense that the Gans Corporation is mostly utilizing ads that have to do with their own products, because this could be less confusing for children to grasp, since clicking on the ad wouldn't necessarily take them away from Webkinz, and that would probably be more better for parents because they would be able to know that if the children were clicking on anything on the Webkinz site, that it wouldn't take them necessarily away from the Webkinz site. In conclusion, SVEs were a very big phenomenon in the mid to late 2000s and early 2010s, being some of the first online experiences children had with video games and online experiences. While some of these games have gone away, one of the games that has somehow stood the test of time is Webkinz. SVEs geared towards children can help with learning objectives such as reading comprehension and computer literacy, among other things, but there are also legitimate concerns parents have when it comes to privacy and advertising concerns.